The papacy. It's a job with a resume that goes back 2,000 years, an impressive benefits package, and one major downside. You're supposed to be God's representative on Earth. This, as you can imagine, creates some pretty high expectations. So when someone is truly spectacularly bad at it, they don't just get a poor performance review, they become a historical legend. The competition for worst pope ever is surprisingly fierce. We're talking about a lineup of characters that make your worst boss look like a management guru. There are the warmongers, the nepotists, and the just plain weird. Our first major contender for the title is a man named Theophylactus of Tusculum, who became Pope Benedict IX. Pope and Theophylactus already sound like a weird combination. He was installed as pope around the year 1032, and the best historical estimates put his age somewhere between 18 and 20. Because when you're looking for spiritual leadership for all of Western Christendom, you naturally turn to a teenager whose primary skills likely involve angst and questionable life choices. His family, the Tusculums, had basically turned the papacy into their own personal property. Benedict wasn't chosen for his piety, he was given the job because his dad bought it for him. It was less a divine calling and more a very, very expensive graduation present. So, what does a teenage pope do with absolute power? Exactly what you'd expect. Chronicles of the time, which we should take with a grain of salt, but not the whole shaker, describe a life of pure debauchery. One contemporary writer, Desiderius of Monte Cassino, said his life was so vile, so foul, so execrable that I shudder to think of it. He apparently got tired of the parties, or perhaps just the job's administrative duties. So in 1045, he did something unprecedented. He decided to sell the papacy. He literally sold the most powerful spiritual office in Europe to his own godfather, a priest named John Gratian, for, and the sources are pretty clear on this, a whole lot of gold. He wanted to marry his cousin, you see. Perfectly normal reason to auction off the keys to heaven. After selling the papacy and becoming Pope Gregory VI, his godfather John Gratian probably thought he got a good deal. But Benedict IX got bored of retirement, so he came back to Rome the next year, 1046, with some family muscle and decided he wanted his job back. And for a while, there were three men all claiming to be pope: Benedict, the guy he sold it to, and another rival. The Holy Roman Emperor Henry III had to march down to Italy to sort out this whole mess, firing all three of them. But Benedict wasn't done. After the emperor's choice of pope died, Benedict came back again in 1047, took the throne, and was eventually run out of town for good. 3 separate terms as pope, the only man to ever do it. And he sold the position at least once, maybe twice. It's not just corruption, it's entrepreneurial corruption. If Benedict IX was a story of greedy apathy, our next candidate is a tale of pure, concentrated, post-mortem rage. Meet Pope Stephen VI. He took office in 896, and he had a serious problem with the guy who held the job before him, Pope Formosus. A huge political beef. Most people would just, write a strongly worded encyclical or reverse some of their predecessors' policies. Stephen VI decided that wasn't nearly dramatic enough. He believed Formosus had been an illegitimate pope. And death, apparently, was no excuse for escaping justice. So he came up with a plan so bizarre, so utterly unhinged, it has its own special name in history: the Cadaver Synod. Yes, it is exactly what it sounds like. Stephen had Pope Formosus's body 9 months after his death, dug up out of his grave. They dressed the rotting corpse in full papal vestments, propped it up on a throne in the Basilica of St. John Lateran, and put it on trial, with Stephen VI acting as the prosecutor, screaming questions at a dead body. A young deacon was appointed as the defense attorney, forced to stand behind the corpse and answer on its behalf. Unsurprisingly, the verdict was guilty. Formosus was stripped of his title, his papal acts were declared null, and the 3 fingers he used for blessings were hacked off. Then they threw his body in the Tiber River. The people of Rome were so disgusted by the spectacle that they rose up, threw Stephen in prison, and had him strangled. Sometimes, history provides its own punchlines. Now we have to talk about the household name in bad popes, Rodrigo Borgia, also known as Pope Alexander VI. Elected in 1492, the same year Columbus sailed the ocean blue, he basically treated the papacy as a hostile takeover of a family business. He got the job through what was widely considered the most expensive and corrupt papal election in history, buying votes with mule loads of silver. Once in power, his goal wasn't spiritual salvation for the masses, it was dynastic power for the Borgias. He had at least 7 children, possibly more, whom he openly acknowledged and promoted. His son Cesare was made a cardinal at 18, and his daughter Lucrezia became a political pawn in his marriage alliance games. Forget separation of church and state. This was the complete merger of church and family ambition. Life in the Vatican under Alexander VI was festive. He threw lavish parties that were scandalous even by the pretty loose standards of the Renaissance. There was the infamous Banquet of the Chestnuts, which the papal master of ceremonies, Johann Burchard, described in his diary with a kind of weary shock. The details are R-rated, so let's just say it involved 50 courtesans and a lot of floor-level party games. Beyond the parties, he used his power ruthlessly. The Borgias were feared for their political maneuvering and, yes, their rumored use of poison, particularly a tasteless powder called cantarella. While historians now think the poisoning was exaggerated for political propaganda, the fear was very real. When you were invited to dinner with the Borgias, you updated your will first. It was just good sense. Here's the complicated part. For all his moral failings, Alexander VI was actually a very effective administrator and diplomat. He was smart. He reorganized the Vatican's finances, supported the arts, and tried to manage the chaotic politics of the Italian city-states. He's the one who drew a line on a map and brokered the Treaty of Tordesillas in 1494, literally dividing the New World between Spain and Portugal to prevent them from going to war. You can thank him for Brazil speaking Portuguese. So he wasn't incompetent. In some ways, he was terrifyingly competent. He just directed all that competence towards personal gain, greed, and securing power for his children, treating the spiritual mission of the church as, at best, a secondary concern. So, who wins the crown? We have 3 spectacular finalists. Stephen VI was arguably insane. His crime was a grotesque, vengeful, and ultimately self-destructive act of desecration. It was pure, emotional madness. Alexander VI was the quintessential corrupt Renaissance prince who just happened to be wearing a pope hat. His sin was systemic, using the entire institution of the church as a vehicle for his family's worldly ambition. It was calculated, intelligent, and deeply cynical. But then we have Benedict IX, the teenager who got the job, got bored, and sold it. Then came back, then got kicked out, then came back again. It has to be Benedict IX. Here's why. The others, in their own twisted ways, still valued the power of the papacy. Stephen VI's rage came from a belief that the office had been defiled by his predecessor. He cared enough to commit a theatrical atrocity over it. Alexander VI craved the papacy's power and influence. He worked tirelessly to leverage it. He saw it as the ultimate prize. Benedict IX saw the papacy as a toy he could pick up, get bored with, and then sell for cash to fund a marriage. He didn't just corrupt the office, he showed utter contempt for it. Selling the keys to the kingdom of heaven is a level of spiritual apathy and transactional sacrilege that the others, for all their sins, never quite reached. It's the difference between a terrible CEO who runs the company into the ground for personal gain and a CEO who just sells the entire company for parts because he's bored. The fact that the papacy, or any institution that's been around for millennia, could survive characters like these is kind of amazing. It suggests that institutions often have a life and a resilience of their own, separate from the deeply flawed, greedy, and sometimes outright ridiculous people who lead them. The office endured a teenage tyrant, a necromaniac, and a mafia don. These popes weren't just bad, they were case studies in how power can go spectacularly wrong. They stand as a permanent historical reminder that putting a fancy hat on someone doesn't magically make them a better person, and that sometimes the person in charge is not only not divine, but is desperately in need of adult supervision. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more historical insights. Thanks for watching, nerds!